Welcome to the Shifting Lens podcast. We're reviewing the animal experience. My name is Molly, and I'm joined with my awesome podcast team, Tima and Rebecca. Today, we're sharing our origin stories in the unique field of anthrozoology. Anthrozoology is a newer interdisciplinary field that overlaps and incorporates many other disciplines, including things like psychology, sociology, anthropology, veterinary science, biology, ethology, you name it. If it involves animals, it overlaps heavily with anthrozoology. All perspectives are welcome, and our goal is just to very much understand the animal and very much human experience. So to get started, I think I'm going to pass the ball to Tima. How did you get into anthrozoology?
All right, sure. So my story is definitely proof that there is no recipe on getting into anthrozoology because, the path I took that led me to be a PhD candidate in anthrozoology now was very unconventional, but it didn't start off as being unconventional. I would say that my story started off the way most stories of anthrozoologists do, I think, growing up with and around non-human animals. I trained horses and dogs and taught lessons at a young age. I gentled Mustangs out in California. But what's interesting to me now as an anthrozoologist, looking back at this time, is that I never really fully subscribed to any singular training method or philosophy. I was always, taking bits and pieces here and there to create the style that worked for me and worked for the animals I was interacting with. So, that's what we do as anthrozoologists, right? We are, by definition, conducting interdisciplinary research. We find the middle ground. We tend to take more flexible approaches and acknowledge different ways of knowing. So I was training horses and dogs. I worked at a honey shop for a while. Shout out to Be Kind, Sebastopol. And then when I graduated high school, I moved from where I grew up in California to Germany at 18 years of age to become a full-time self-employed guide dog instructor, also known as GDMI. And a few years later, I became a certified dog trainer, became a certified dog behavior consultant with the German Chamber of Commerce, so to speak, I guess would be a translation for that. And yeah, so working with guide dogs became my passion, became my entire focus for the following 6 years. But eventually I decided to end that career for reasons actually, funnily enough, that I am now analyzing as part of my PhD. So kind of came full circle in that sense. But I did decide to take advantage of this shift in my work life and return to university, return to school in a way, and get a degree under my belt, which definitely started off with minimal enthusiasm. I was not too excited about going back to university, I'm going to be honest. I spent months researching what was out there, what might work for me, putting in all these different keywords into Google. And you guys, then I saw it in a random article in some footnote of some random image. I heard the word anthrozoology and I was thinking like, huh? I had never heard this term used. I had never met an anthrozoologist. But I Googled it and I was completely over the moon. And I thought, surely I can't get a degree in something like this. There's no way. This is too perfect. And I immediately looked into what was available and came across the MA in anthrozoology at the University of Exeter. So I immediately applied with professional experience in the field. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm actually realizing now it sounds like this is an ad for the program. It's not. I swear I'm not getting paid. I took it part-time. So it's 2 years, full-time is 1 year. And 6 months into it, I knew I was completely certain that I wanted to continue on to a PhD in anthrozoology. So yeah, that leads me to where I am now, about to finish my first year of my PhD in anthrozoology at the University of Exeter still. And I absolutely love it. And for me personally, this was the right path. It was the right choice. It was sort of, for lack of a better phrase, meant to happen this way. And like I said, it was not traditional path. I didn't follow a recipe, but I think it does go to show that there is no right way to get into the field of anthrozoology, whether in an applied sense or whether academic. And I hope that my story can encourage anyone who's sort of perched on the fence to just go for it if that's what you want to do. And I'm actually curious to hear how you got into this, Rebecca. What led you to where you are now with your degree?
Yeah, so it was actually very different for me. I mean, I guess like anyone who ends up in a field related to animals, I grew up with a lot of animals around, lots of companion animals, mostly dogs, cats, and birds at home. But I would also interact with the neighbors' animals and street cats. And one thing that really sticks out to me is when I first was old enough to walk to school by myself, a neighbor's cat would actually follow me to the end of the road and watch as I crossed and go to the school. And this was every single day. So
Oh,
yeah, so it was kind of the first time I really thought about how relationships are built between humans and animals beyond just the idea of having a pet. Obviously, not with the critical lens I have now, but I remember thinking it was really cool that I could have a friend that wasn't human, but that I didn't like actually own, to use like the word we usually apply to companion animals. Spending all this time with companion animals as a kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up because I knew what I really wanted to do was to help animals. And that was the way you're told you can help animals as a kid. But I was about 12 or 13 years old when my first dog got an aggressive form of cancer. And from a perfect checkup to 21 days later, there was nothing we could do. So I was actually allowed to go with her to the vet to say goodbye. And in that context, through that experience, I realized that I didn't want to be a vet. I didn't want to be the person advising that this was the only option, and I didn't want to be the person administering the needle. So I kind of moved away from looking at helping animals as a career. I made my volunteer hours during high school working at a cat shelter, which only reinforced my disinterest in veterinary studies. Um, and eventually I decided that I was better off helping humans rather than animals and went to university for undergraduate studies in psychology. Within about a year, I switched to anthropology because I realized I was way more interested in how society functions and shapes human interactions and behaviors than actually how the brain works.
Hmm.
So I focused my attention on class warfare, colonialism, and depression, and came out of that program not really sure where I wanted to go next. So I had moved to Newfoundland for school and I actually moved back home to Ontario and just took some time to try to find the right fit, save up some money, make sure that when I did decide to go back, I wasn't wasting my time or money or energy on anything that wasn't perfect. And I just kept an eye on programs that popped up. And one day, I mean, similar to what Tiamat said, one day I just hit the right combination of search terms and like magic, this program at University of Exeter with the name Anthrozoology showed up. And I went, well, that sounds like animals and people. I like that. So I was within 2 months of the application deadline, which felt like a ton of pressure, but it just seemed too perfect. So I went for it, and that's where I am now. My main focus is the Atlantic seal hunt and the neocolonial forces at work there. So it's kind of nice that I'm still able to look at some of the themes that I looked at in my undergrad anthropology research. Um, and I mean, my story is not super interesting. I just kind of started going to school, and school continued to shape what I wanted to do. But I think that's one of the most valuable things I've found in the program is like talking to people with such different interests and such different backgrounds is really helping this field develop so quickly and become so all encompassing. So I'll let Molly go ahead now and talk about how she got here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like we have like this cool overlap. Anyway, thank you, Rebecca and Tiamat, because I think those are awesome stories. Because it is just such a weird way that we all kind of get here. And first, before I
Yeah.
go into my story, I do got to say, Rebecca, as much as you say, you know, oh yeah, it's still traditional, you still chose to Google search something else. You didn't just say, all right, I'm going to stay in anthropology. I'm going to be an anthropologist. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that. I have huge respect for anthropologists. My undergrad is in anthropology, but like you did, you did Google magic. You figured out the secret word. So I don't know about you guys, but school was not for me in undergrad. I struggled real bad in high school. I struggled real bad in college. I mean, I graduated in 4 years with an undergrad in anthropology, but I'll be completely frank, I remember almost none of it. I remember the entire time I was thinking about, oh God, what am I going to do with my life? I'm actually going to pause my story for 1 sec to say, not just are there humans in attendance today, there are also, I think, something like 3 or 4 dogs, a parrot, some cats, and some reptiles. So just be aware that there's going to be some weird noises. So I apologize for that.
We wouldn't have it any other way as anthrozoologists.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think it's important to acknowledge they're in attendance.
They deserve it.
Anyway, yeah, so I struggled real bad. I urgently wanted to work once I got out of undergrad. I didn't think graduate school was not for me. My friends that were focused on being in graduate school had graduate school plans, were taking the GREs and all that. That was not my lifestyle. I just wanted to survive. I worked in just retail, you know, the normal thing you do when you get out of college, but I actually realized I was pretty good at it. And so I spent 20 years in pet supply retail, and at the same time I started building my own business, working with dogs. I got my own first personal me dog upon graduation and fell in love with trying to understand how my dog thought. I'd studied, you know, anthropology, not psychology. So I was trying to understand that. And I spent a long time self-teaching myself, self-educating myself on business, on ethology, on animals. And I was in love. That was the first time in my life that I'd enjoyed learning. I climbed up the professional ladder. I earned all the certifications that were accessible to me in the United States. I joined board of directors. I did all sorts of things. You know, I just felt like, well, this is something I'm good at and I can shine at it, until I kind of hit the ceiling. And I was like, oh, well, this is fine. But one day, somebody I looked up to in the organization I was on the board of directors for, her email signature said she had a master's in science and anthrozoology. And I was like, what the hell is that? So that was my like hint that there was something else out there. What? So I Googled as well, and I saw an extra program, but didn't know how anything worked outside of the United States. So that was terrifying. But I did see an American program that did not include a PhD. Instead, just included the master's, which is where my friend turned out had earned hers. And that was a master's in anthrozoology from Canisius College. And it was online, which I thought was fantastic. I was like, great, I don't have to move. I don't have to pack up my life. I don't have to show up on campus every day. Because I remember those are the things I struggled with. Oh, this is online learning. This is what I'm good at. So I did that and I fell in love, like hard. I will never forget. And I'm sure you guys have similar experiences. You show up for like your on-campus, like in-person part of online learning. And we're all sitting at a table going, there's something for me. These people are like me. Because I mean, let's be fair, we're the weirdos in the room that like animals. Like that's just normally that's a disqualifier. But for the first time in my life, it was what included me. And it felt really special. I became sort of obsessed by the idea that we didn't have to fit in a box anymore, that in anthrozoology, you know, you have your quantitative and qualitative methods, but it's kind of like an accordion. It just opens up from there. And there's just so much to look at. And I realized I could investigate and test any question I had about anything. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. You know, I realized I could love school again. And I realized that there were huge elements of being a business owner, an entrepreneur, that complemented being a graduate student that no one had ever explained to me. So I thought that was super cool. Yeah, I'm sure you completely understand that, Tiamat. So anyway, I loved it. It was amazing. My master's thesis is scheduled for publication in like a couple of months. I can't believe it. Ooh. And out of all the things, for just the hell of it, I saw a job posting completely across the country from where I was living, teaching anthrozoology. I was like, I'm not qualified for this. Sure, I have all the animal background that they wanted, but I have a master's degree. Well, lo and behold, they thought otherwise, and I got hired, and I now teach at Carroll College in Helena, Montana, doing my dream job, teaching students who, like me, were struggling or just didn't feel like they belonged. And now I get to like see 20 to 50 of them at like each class, and it's amazing. And I get to just stir that excitement. And somehow in my free time, I will also be pursuing my PhD, ideally through the Exeter program. That is the plan. I got to get my butt in the chair and write, but that's when I get to officially hang out with you guys. But that's sort of where I'm at now and how I got here. So, I mean, anthrozoologists you fall upon it. I can't wait to find out who is going to accidentally listen to this podcast and Google it and join our awesome little collective. Like, I just can't wait.
I think that's what it is though, isn't it? It's sort of that, for lack of a better word at the moment, but kind of that tribe thing. You kind of feel like you found your people in this
Mhm.
weird way. Like you said, usually you're the oddball who is observing why that bird is interacting with that person. But now everyone's curious about that. And you're talking about these fascinating topics together. I think that's really what, I don't know, it does feel different than just any other degree, I would think,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
no, you definitely belong. I mean, I love teaching my students this. We'll sit outside to have some discussion about a reading, and we're all mesmerized by the magpie in the pine tree, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Nobody's getting yelled at for looking at the
Yeah.
bird. Instead, we completely divert the conversation to the bird.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so cool. I don't know. I mean, and like we all Googled it.
You know, we took different paths to end up Googling that word, but we all thought outside of the box to get there. And I don't know, I think also it's this, with Molly especially, sort of this entrepreneurial thinking that you always mention, that you have these different businesses and you had these different jobs and these side projects. And I wonder if there's something there as well, that it might be sort of this mindset of wanting to sort of mix and match things and trying to find the middle ground in what we're doing.
I mean,
I think
100%.
so. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I mean for me, my side business is hand knitted products. Like it's not exactly in
Right.
this realm at all.
Cool.
But it's still I still had this attitude of I'm going to wait until I find the right program or I'm going to find a way to wedge myself in and make it. Like that was very much my attitude. So I was either going to a graduate school in anthropology and I was going to talk about human animal relationships no matter what they wanted me to do, or I found this. And I think you're right. There's something there about like knowing there has to be more and being willing to search for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, if anything, you think about it though, it sort of suits the field. So not just are we examining the fact that there are animals with like capital A and it's biology or it's ethology or whatever it is, we also concern ourselves with the individual story and the background. And that's kind of, we're putting out what we took in. We found a program that fits us as individuals and our interests. I mean, for
Mm.
the first time in our lives, we're not just the weird animal kid in the corner that nobody takes seriously. We found a field that identifies the individual animal and celebrates the individual scientist, researcher, perspective, lens, all of that. And I think that's kind of magical.
I think too that it indicates how intersectional the field is. Like because it's a coming together of so many different disciplines, it offers a diversity of perspective that I mean maybe things have changed in the past 5 years or so, but that I didn't find in anthropology. Anthropology when I was there was still a bunch of middle-aged white men, and
Mm.
that's not the experience I've had of this field. So I think the fact that we're bringing in people from all different areas is going to actually lead to more diversity of opinion in the literature that comes out of it, but also to more engaging discussions.
That's a great point too, when someone's thinking about pursuing a degree in an anthrozoology related field, or if they simply want to be more an applied anthrozoologist, is the, you know, what it really comes down to is, what is it that you want to do with it? What is it that you want to research? What is it that you want to do in an applied sense? That then dictates what it is that you need under your belt, so to speak, beforehand. So I think that's a big question that a lot of people have is, oh, what degree do I need to get into an anthrozoology program, whether it's an MA or a PhD? But I think, yeah, you just have to sort of ask yourself what it is that you're interested in and base it off of that. So everyone has such different backgrounds. It's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down, this is me speaking, and maybe this is just my entrepreneurial jargon, but it's what is unique about you and what is risky about you? What is
Mm.
driving you? And then again, what is that lens? Where are you somewhere academically grounded, wherever your bachelor's or your master's is from? You know, maybe it's more philosophy, maybe it's more, you know, whatever it is, and then bringing it. Because one of the things I love the most about our field is that we don't have to, we should know somewhere we're grounded, but I love the other voices saying, well, what about this
Yeah.
variable? What about this population? What about this continent? What about this culture? What about this theory? And you're like, oh, okay. And then it's almost humbling because you know you're never going to be truly quote unquote right, but we're all open to just keep digging. And I just think that's something really special.
That it is it, isn't it? Because if you have a degree in in anthropology or in any degree that's not as interdisciplinary as anthrozoology. It's you're familiarizing yourself with these methods, with this literature, with this practice. And I think that Molly made a fantastic point, because it does keep you on your toes a little bit, because you're always needing to familiarize yourself with different literature. You're always talking to other anthrozoologists who are in your field, yeah, but they have such different backgrounds that they're really just highlighting the cracks, that the blind spots, the blind spots that you might have. So you're shifting your lens to to look at them and get these different perspectives. So I think that's really what I savor the most in all of that. Yeah.
No, it is. It's so unique. I mean, this whole conversation gives me chills. I'm such a nerd about it, but I'm just like, oh, yes, that.
Well, and I think all of our conversations, we always seem to come back to this. I mean, we joke about it, but it is kind of true that everything can get linked back to anthrozoology, because everything is human animal. It's affecting everything around us, right? The environment, everything is interconnected and all of that. But that's what makes this field so fascinating. It's that limitless exploration and being able to look at quantitative research as well as qualitative and just bite into it. It's fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, I love when my students, especially when I get a freshman who's like, I was going to be pre-med, but I really liked hearing what you talked about with anthrozoology. My parents are freaking out because they have no idea what I can do with it. And help me. And of course, that poor student can't articulate to their parent why they like it, why they've, that was that early phase for all of us. We're getting sucked in, but we can't articulate why. And I tell them, like, let me talk to your parent. Let me get them excited as I've gotten you about it, because it's what you said. It's immeasurable how many ways this overlaps, whether it's academic profession. I think that's, it's almost not quantifiable. It is only qualifiable because we just keep finding these connections and these overlaps. And it's only when you notice it, when you witness it, and you're always going to fall on expertise that are not your own. Like, at some point in this conversation, I'm going to pin Rebecca down and be like, talk to me about colonialism, because I'm still so ignorant. I'm a huge ignorant ethnocentric white girl. And I want to know more about like your overlap with that, because it's something that, again, it fascinates me. I will never master it, but I want to eat it up so badly.
I mean, same goes with you. Like, you study primitive dog breeds, which to me, like, I didn't know those words until I met you. It didn't occur to me that there were dog breeds that were around 500 plus years ago, because we've done so much to dog breeds that it seemed infeasible. So I think it's really exciting how we all have this same eagerness to devour as much knowledge as we can. And then we keep finding people who fill in the gaps in our knowledge. And like, I don't know, it's great. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of that, it never stops. I don't know if you just saw the thing that came out this week, so this is going to age this podcast forever. But there's a whole thing about like the 5 different breeds, ancient breeds that are like 10,000 years old from these archaeological evidence. It's very awkward when you work and focus on New Guinea singing dogs, for those of you who don't know me, and they talk about the dog line from Lake Baikal and the dog line from this location, and then just New Guinea singing dogs. And I'm like, so now I'm talking about owning and caring for and having a relationship with a canine that is 11,000 years old. So even then, it never stops. And I think that's so motivating. It's amazing. I get to open my computer every day and go, holy shit.
And also reading literature from, a completely different field. You read a paper in social psychology, and something they're referring to with gender has to do with your research with gender, with human animal interactions, and you make these crazy connections. Yeah. But it makes sense because it is all interconnected. Everything we do is, in a sense, interdisciplinary in a way. So that's what makes this so fascinating for me as well, is it's just like making those wild connections where I feel like people in other fields look at us and they're like, why would you make that connection with us? But for us, it makes total sense. We're like, no, this is.
Yeah. I mean, like when we first started talking and you talked about emotional labor, I was like, what? What is that? I need to know more. Tell me. And like, we're so hungry to just understand. And you're like, oh yeah, it's this thing I know. Like, it's like 3rd grade show and tell. You come in with this thing that you're kind of proud of, and everybody else is going, ooh.
Which is amazing because as a kid, I was like, I learned this new thing about sharks, and all my friends now have to know this thing about sharks. But no one really cared this new thing I had learned about sharks.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I look at my class warfare and labor background, and I'm studying unemployed timber elephants in Myanmar. And now
Wow.
people want to hear me talk about the silly things I know.
No,
It's great.
yeah.
Like even just thinking about the idea of employment and an animal for anybody who's just popped into this and is like, wait, employment? Animals, what? Like what kind of perspective is even, like, I love it. Oh my God.
Animals as coworkers, animals as employee, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
It's, and that's what you guys are saying is so true. It's that we all have that core interest. We just want to know stuff about humans and animals and like what makes them tick and the conflicts between them and the joys between them and all of these things. But I don't care what anyone is studying in anthrozoology. So far, I found all of the research interesting. I haven't come across one research project that I thought, whatever. Each one I was like, tell me more. And I feel that I'm not the only one feeling that way in anthrozoology. I think we all have, like Molly was saying, we all have this drive to just know more and more about human animal interactions. So
I will warn any listener though. Maybe this is my little like tiny print warning at the bottom, and that's that anthrozoology also ruins it for you. It sort of pulls back the curtain. Like I warn all of my students when I teach them classes about canines. And I say, listen, I'm going to ruin a lot of the things that you think you believe, that you are like pillars of your understanding and love of dogs, because there's just so much information that is contrary to what we believe. And so that's the one thing is that it, like I can't watch movies with animals in them. Like I can't read fiction books about animals usually unless they're like really old fiction about animals. Like I can't watch, also this is professional, but I can't watch a lot of pet owners with animals. Like if somebody I barely know says they just got a dog, I'm like, oh no.
yeah.
So this kind of does ruin things for you.
I mean, I don't even know how I feel about it even now, but a month or two into it, I was like, wait, should we live with other animals? Should we keep them in our home? Why do I have, and I looked at my dog and I was like, blink twice if you're okay. Like, seriously, I was like, are you a prisoner? Are you my slave? And I fundamentally questioned everything. When I say, I'm sure there's even more coming soon.
Yeah.
It'll continue, but what I feel is fundamentally everything at the moment. And as someone who like Molly trains dogs, trains horses, to question whether I should live with dogs and horses was, that's a big thing. It's my identity. I was questioning who I was and how I think about everything. And Molly's definitely right in warning people about that, because I actually warned my friend. I dragged her into the MA in anthrozoology and I said, you have to do this. This is amazing. She's a fellow horse person. And I said, yeah, but everything changed. You're going to look at everything differently. And she's like, yeah, I doubt it. And she got into it. A couple weeks later, she calls me and she's like, should I live with a dog? And we're both just confused. So yeah, it takes you for a journey, but I think if you have that innately in you of loving animals and loving interactions with humans and animals, you'll get out the other side. You'll figure each thing out.
You'll land wherever you land, and it's fine. I mean, I ended up choosing vegetarianism, but I still have pets. Like, I have exotic pets. Like, that's its own thing to unpack. So, I think it's a normal, important, critical exercise. And we're all going to come out of it somewhere feeling guilty about something.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're all kind of going through that. And I think if you find the right, we've clicked, if we find the right circle of individuals to support each other, like you said, your friend was like, oh my God, should I have a dog? We support each other through that. Like, okay, we shouldn't just let them all go and hope for the best. Like, let's now ground this and figure out how we can navigate with what we now know.
Yeah, I can definitely recommend Sam's book. So it's for anyone who doesn't know, Samantha Hurn's book is Humans and Other Animals. And we'll put a link in the description, because I think that it gives a very well-rounded kind of introduction into anthrozoology and touches on these little topics that we've brought up.
It's funny. I had a student come into my office just this past week who was like, my parents are going to buy me books for Christmas. What should I get? And I was like, oh Lord, here's a stat. I mean, I actually have Samantha's book right here. I agree with you that that was one of the first, and I think it's one of the more powerful ones. Um, I think though, I'm a Googler. Like, I just want to like scurry around the internet and find answers real quick, not just reading books. Sometimes, especially if I'm a skeptic and I just want to know chunks.
Yeah.
And Animal Society Institute's website is amazing for that. I mean, it gives you all these definitions. There's little videos and vignettes explaining different concepts, especially if they're not in your field or not from, you know, what you've previously studied. So that was super helpful. And also all the programs, they have a journal. So I think that's really helpful if somebody's just listening to this and is like, I just want the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, just give it to me
their stuff's
straight.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just give it to me straight before I invest in hand out all of my sanity over to this organization. But Rebecca, you said something really cool about Samantha's book, about how you experienced it, and I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I found it was introductory, but it was still introductory in a way where it didn't give you bullet points of facts so much as it asked you all of the questions. So reading through the book, each chapter I felt kind of said, here's a big question in the field, and here's kind of where we are now with it. Think that through, and offers some further reading at the end of the chapters too. So I felt like it kind of opened my eyes to all of the questions and all of the open ends that we're still looking at as a field. So I felt like it was really good for that. It didn't seek to be the answer. It sought to open the question.
I think the only other thing I might add is if somebody's looking for something a little bit more quantitative, or is coming at this from the field of like animal assisted stuff. I mean, Tiamat, you're involved in guide dogs, so if there's something that pops in your mind, but Aubrey Fine's work is always great because it's different chapters by different people doing applied quantitative stuff. So if that's really what resonates with you and you don't want to necessarily just chew on the questions, that might help you feel like there is a door and a path into this field that's through something that resonates with those individuals.
I'm just sort of thinking about books now and reading about anthrozoology and all this reminds me, I thought about this the other day actually, that I had this moment, this memory that I had forgotten about from when I don't even know how old I was definitely a teenager. And I was in my living room and I was reading one of Mark Beckoff's books.
Oh,
and
yeah.
At the time, you know, I obviously, based on my story, you know, I didn't know anything about anthrozoology. Anthrozoology was even less of a thing then than it is now. And I had this moment and I was reading it and I said, I don't know what this guy does. I don't know what this Mark Beckoff guy does for a living, but I want to do this. He's just going around looking at humans and animals and he's writing about it. And I had this moment where I stopped reading and I had a very surreal moment now thinking back on it. I was like, this is actually, I would want to do this. But I didn't know anything about researching. And, you know, that was like, what, 13 or 14 years old. So I think, yeah, finding a book that you can resonate with that might really inspire you. You know, there's a lot out there, and there's, like Molly was saying, depending on your field, if you're coming from therapy animals or if you're coming from a completely different area, if you're veterinary medicine or something, you know, it might be worth like a Google Scholar search with some keywords that you're interested in. And there's a lot out there actually with anthrozoology in all these different fields that you just have to sort of look, and it might not say anthrozoology, it might say, you know, interaction or something, but it can be so inspiring to see what can be done, what's out there, and what sort of topics you might be able to research if you're sort of at a loss for ideas or something. That might be a nice little inspiration.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this has been a great chat. You know, this is why I think it's fun to get on here and talk as a group, because we've all just had such interesting experiences. And I think this is actually the norm for the field. So yeah. I hope that anyone listening who wants more information, they can reach out or spend some time on Google and open the door and kiss your previous reality goodbye, because
yeah, there's no going back.
There's no going back.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, thank you very much for joining us. And this has been the Shifting Lens podcast. And I hope you will join us for another episode in the future. Have a great day.